A discussion that I have with my students is about ethics when it comes to graphic design and photography, because the majority of the images that we see in magazines and advertisements have been photoshopped to some degree, and sometimes it's been quite extensive. One of the things we do is watch the Dove Evolution commercial where they take a model and give her a makeover, but then they show the process of taking her into Photoshop and completely altering her facial structure and things like that. And we talk about the impact that that has on society and things like that. And then after we have that discussion, I introduce to them the concepts of how to do a makeover and how to do Photoshop, removing blemishes, all those things on a model. And that way they kind of understand where they sit on, if it's right or wrong and those things, but then they have the tools to do it. And so I've got an image here we're going to practice on. I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in. So this is full size. Double click on the hand tool here. Something that's really helpful is to have your before and after so you can see what you started with. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control J on this background layer. I'm going to duplicate it and rename this one Original. And we'll call this one Photoshopped. Now, on the Photoshop layer, first thing I would typically do here is probably start to remove some of these blemishes. You can see there's this eyedropper as well. You've got some healing tools right here where this Band-Aid lives. The spot healing brush is probably the easiest to use. You can control the size of it here. You can also use the bracket keys under your backspace key to quickly change the size because you don't want it too big. But literally you can just click on areas and it's going to look around that area and try to patch it with a similar texture and color. If you got an area, you can also drag through and start taking some of the spots like that. So we can very, very quickly remove the majority of the blemishes in this image. Got one big one here. Let's just take that all at once if we can. And then I'll try to take out this eyedropper. Just going to drag over it. And did a pretty good job. There's a slight line here you can see. There's a few more tools in here that you can use. The healing brush, you need to actually click Alt on a spot that you want to use there. And then you can see it's kind of inside my brush. And then as I paint, it's using that kind of texture and color and trying to patch that area, which that actually looks pretty good, right? So not too bad. And then you've also got the patch tool. And in this tool, you'd actually circle the area you want to patch, and then you would click and drag and move it to an area that's similar to what you want, and it would use that kind of texture and color and try to patch it as well. So call that good right there. And here's the before and after what we got so far, right? So blemishes have been removed, eyedropper's been removed. Looks pretty good. I'm actually going to take out that spot there as well. So it looks good. Next thing we would maybe do is let's alter her facial structure a little bit. So to do that, you could right click and create a smart object so you can change this later if you want to. I'm not going to do that, but that way you can go back and make changes if you'd like. I'm actually going to apply them straight to the layer. I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to go to Liquify. And the nice thing about this is if this face tool is selected, it's automatically going to detect facial features. And so you can quickly and easily change these. So for example, on her nose, right, we can raise or lower it, can make it thinner or thicker. On her mouth, same thing. Let's make her lips slightly larger. And you could, make her smile a little bit more, change the width of her mouth. And then her eyes, same thing, right? We can make her eyes a little bit larger. You can change the angle of the eyes, and all those types of things. So you also have an overall control of the size of her face, the shape. We can make it a little more narrow and things like that. Now, in addition to that, there are other tools in here as well. You got the forward warp tool that would allow you, I'll show you something dramatic here, to push pixels, right? You've got the reconstruct tool. So if you wanted to change something back, you can take the reconstruct tool and you can just paint over it until it goes back to its original You got the smooth tool, you got twirl clockwise, it's going to spin pixels. You got the pucker, which would be helpful in something like this situation. Maybe we want to just alter just that part of her nostril. Click on that and it's going to shrink it down or something like that. So it's slowly shrinking her nose down just a little bit. The bloat tool would be opposite and make the object inside a little larger. So maybe we want to make her eye just a bit bigger. Click on that, it gets a little bit larger. And you get a freeze mask, which if you're working with a certain area but you don't want to affect the areas around it, maybe you want to make her eye a little larger without changing her eyelid or anything around that. We could freeze that. I could then change the size of it and it will not affect the frozen pixels, and then I can go back and unfreeze those pixels. And in addition to that, you've got a lot of different controls over here as well. Once you like what you've got, you go ahead and hit OK. It'll apply that, and you can see, right, we have increased our eye size, made our mouth bigger, nose a little smaller, and removed all the blemishes. So quite a change so far, and you can't really tell we've done anything as far as you wouldn't recognize this as photoshopped. Okay, next let's add some makeup and do some color changing. So if I go ahead and add a new layer, and there's lots of different ways you can do this, but we're going to go ahead and let's give her some lipstick. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a color for her lipstick. Let's take something like that. I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to go grab a brush, and that's obviously not what we want. As a quick shortcut, if you don't already know this, in addition to the bracket keys, you can change the hardness or softness as well as the size of the brush. If you hold down Alt and Control on a PC and then right click, you can drag it. If you drag down, that changes the hardness of the brush. If you go right and left, that's the size of the brush. And in this case, I'm just going to use the bracket keys, but I'm going to go ahead and give her some lipstick here. So this will look much better if you take some time and make sure that you paint it well. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, I'll just get it close. But if we just go ahead and paint over her lips, give her a little bit of lipstick. And hopefully that's close enough for now. You'll get the idea here. We take that, and that looks pretty bad. You could change the opacity down, which would make it look more realistic. But if you use the layer blending modes, which are right here, they'll allow the colors and the photo to interact in different ways. And you can simply just click, or not click, just hover over, and you can see what those do, right? You can get some very, very different looks. And depending on what you've got, it's going to give you something different. So I think soft light actually looks really good, maybe a little bit too intense. So once I've done that, I can then adjust the opacity of the layer as well and turn that down until I get it to a level that I think looks pretty good. So let's go 40%, looks great. You can see the before and after on her lipstick, it looks pretty good. You can do the same thing with makeup. Maybe we want to give her some eyeshadow. And actually just use that exact same color. And just go right here over her eyes. And we'll do the same thing. I'm going to go soft light again. I think that looked pretty good. That's very intense. So we can turn that down quite a ways. Just give her just a little bit of color in the eyes. And then let's also give her some color in her cheeks. So I'm going to go ahead and increase my brush size. I'm actually going to make my brush very, very soft here. Turn the softness all the way down. And so we'll paint a little here, maybe a little bit over here on this side. And then same thing, I'm going to go to soft light. I'm going to go ahead and turn that way, way down. So there's just a little pop of color. And right, she has now got makeup. I'm going to go ahead and merge all these layers together, just so you can see the before and after. So I'm going to select all those, and right click and merge the layers. And you can see there's the before and there's the after, right? And maybe let's just do two more things. Let's go ahead and change her eye color, and then we'll change her teeth as well. So on her eyes, I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. I'm going to pick a color, and depending on the color you're starting with, you're going to get different results here. I'm going to take a blue, And watch what happens when I do this. I'm going to go ahead and paint the brown area of her eye. Do the same thing on this side. And then you could try the opacity, see what happens there. It turns it kind of blue, but doesn't really, looks like it's just sitting on top. So once again, you can use the blending modes until you find something that you like. And that changes it. So you should get different colors of brown. Like overlay looks pretty good there, right? We've changed her eyes completely to a green color. It doesn't look perfectly realistic. Let's change the intensity just a little bit. And we have now changed her brown eyes successfully to having green eyes. One last thing, let's try changing her teeth. Let me merge these layers. So I'm going to not create a new layer this time. I'm going to make a selection. Her teeth are pretty white to start with, but let's just look at how you would do this. So you try to make a good selection on the teeth. I'm going to take the lasso tool. Try to get teeth and only the teeth. And as with everything, the better your selection, the better your results. We'll call that one good. And then from there, we're going to go to the adjustments, and I'm going to actually pick hue and saturation, which typically you'd think would change color. And in fact, you could slide this around. You can see our teeth are changing colors, which we don't want to do. But I do want to change the saturation. If I pull this all the way down, you see our teeth go blue. If I go all the way up, you see they go kind of like yellow. And in the middle, they look pretty white, but there's a slight yellow tint. If we pull that down just a little, we increase the whiteness in her teeth, and then you could even make them darker or brighter. In this case, maybe just a little brighter. And her teeth were pretty white to start with, but you can see I actually pulled a tiny bit of yellow out, and they're now whiter. Okay, so if I go ahead and merge those again, here's our before, and here's our after. And that is how you would do a makeover inside of Photoshop.